Coming up, multiple crashes took place over the weekend across the region. And Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is calling for Attorney Generals Bill Barr and Jeff Sessions to be subpoenaed. Plus, short-term rain impact may affect food prices in North Dakota. Valley News Live at 10. It starts right now. Good evening and thank you for joining us. I am Nashay Taylor. A vehicle overturned on Edgewood Drive in Fargo last night shortly after 10:30 p.m. Both Fargo and fire police departments responded to the accident. Authorities on scene say the crash involved two vehicles. Unfortunately, no further details have been released thus far. Stick with Valley News Live as those details become available. Grand Forks police responded to a rollover crash at the intersection of Gateway Drive and North Washington Street at about 10:15 last night. Authorities say a tan Chevy Avalanche going west through the intersection struck a traffic light. The vehicle continued westbound, striking four parked cars in the Galaxy Auto dealership. The Chevy, carrying two passengers, then overturned and rested on its roof. Both passengers were transported to a local hospital for evaluation. The cause of the crash is still being investigated. Anyone who may have witnessed the crash is encouraged to contact the Grand Forks Police at 701-787-8000. And two people were seriously hurt in a crash on 38th Street Northeast near Maddock. The accident took place on Saturday night shortly before 9:30 p.m. A Ford F-150 and a Ram Laramie were both traveling east on 38th Street. The driver of the Laramie was attempting a U-turn, causing the Ford following behind it to crash into it. Both vehicles landed in a ditch following the collision. Two people were transported to the hospital for serious, non-life-threatening injuries. Both drivers are facing DUI charges and other traffic violations. And one person is dead after a rollover crash took place early this morning in Oaks. The accident occurred on Highway 11 near mile marker 109 around 1:30 a.m. this morning. A 33-year-old man was driving eastbound at a high rate of speed. The driver lost control and entered a ditch. He then overcorrected, causing the vehicle to roll. He was ejected from the vehicle and died from his injuries. Authorities say alcohol and drugs were a factor in the crash. On the final day of the G7 summit, President Biden focused on reviving relationships with the richest democracies in the world. Here's the latest.
President Joe Biden with a clear message to the world. The only way to face global threats is to join forces.
I conveyed to each of my G7 counterparts that the United States is going to do our part. America is back at the table.
That sentiment was applauded by other leaders, including French President Emmanuel Macron.
What we need is cooperation, and I think it's great to have the U.S. president part of the club and very willing to cooperate.
During the three-day summit, the G7 pledged to support a global minimum tax, a transition to clean energy, and to contribute at least 1 billion COVID-19 vaccines to the rest of the world.
A week ago, I asked my fellow leaders to help in preparing and providing the doses we need to vaccinate the whole world by the end of 2022.
The leaders are also calling for a new probe into the origins of COVID-19 after a previous report was considered lacking due to China's refusal to cooperate.
We have to build a system whereby we can know when we see another lack of transparency might produce another pandemic.
I'm John Lawrence reporting.
On Wednesday, President Biden is scheduled to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Putin recently said the relations between the U.S. and Russia are at a low point. When asked today about that point, Biden agreed, but added that he hopes there will be a way for the two countries to work together. And NATO leaders will seek reassurance tomorrow from President Joe Biden following his impending trip to Brussels. This comes after 4 years of tension with his predecessor, Donald Trump. In a more scaled-back gathering due to COVID restraints, the 30 allies will meet in their glass and steel headquarters to agree on reforms. Climate change, Afghanistan, and new technologies are on the menu of the day-long summit. The NATO summit will seek to agree on reforms to the alliance known as NATO 2030, which were set in motion after former President Trump questioned its relevance. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is calling for Attorney Generals Bill Barr and Jeff Sessions to be subpoenaed. Last week, it was revealed that during Trump's presidency, the Justice Department used subpoenas to obtain information from Apple about at least 2 Democrat members of the House Intelligence Committee.
This was nothing less than a gross abuse of power, an assault on the separation of powers. I don't think we've ever had a record of this happening in the past.
Schumer says Barr and Sessions must testify under oath as part of a formal congressional investigation. Both Barr and Sessions have denied knowledge of any secret DOJ subpoenas. And the Dakota Access oil pipeline opponents have asked a federal judge to require detailed monthly status reports while the federal government conducts an extensive environmental review. The request comes after Judge James Boasberg ruled last month that the pipeline may continue operating while the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers conducts the review. The judge ordered the parties involved in the litigation to meet Friday to go over the next steps they plan to take. Pipeline attorneys told the court they shouldn't have to provide status reports and renewed their long-standing request to have the case dismissed. Attorneys for the Standing Rock Sioux and other tribes say a decision to appeal the judge's order could come later. North Dakota's health department is warning residents to avoid blue-green algae that can develop in bodies of water. Hot summer weather contributes to the production of the algae. People and animals who ingest affected water can get sick and even die. There's no known antidote for toxins blue-green algae can produce. People are urged to avoid water that looks discolored or has a foul odor. Algae blooms are most common in the late summer, but it only takes a few hot days to cause the organisms to become active in bloom. Rain this past week was a welcome surprise for farmers and ranchers, but the short-term impact may affect food prices. Eugene Grainer with Heartland Investor Services in Bismarck says the moisture might help wheat growth in the short term, but drier conditions next week could drive prices much higher.
Droughts like this accentuate the value of grain. So if grain prices go up, it means higher food prices. Farmers like higher prices for revenue, but consumers don't like having to pay up for food.
Grainer says corn prices may be following similar trends as the 2011-2012 seasons. Wheat prices haven't been this high since June 2017. And with loosening restrictions, life is starting to return back to normal. Some benefiting from this are vendors at the Summer Craft Market. Valley News Team's Aaron Walling brings us the story.
It has been a year and a half since the Summer Craft Market last held their event due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But as restrictions loosen, the market makes its big return outside the Drecker Brewing Company.
This is huge. It's been like a year and a half since we've done a market like this here at Drecker. And it's just such a wonderful vibe. The vendors have been doing really well today. The community is showing up. They're outdoors and indoors. I feel it's just really great.
While some businesses folded during the pandemic, others just got started with their own. Take Hannah Stutler, for example. She started her own business and now gets to experience what a market full of people feels like.
Yeah, so this is actually my first summer doing crafters fairs, so this is all kind of new to me, and it's really crazy to see like everybody coming out here and supporting in such an amazing way. So yeah, it's all new to me, but I love it. I love all of it.
Some of these vendors use markets to help promote their business, and with the return of the Summer Craft Market, these vendors are getting back to what they love.
There were a lot of vendors who had companies and they didn't make it. They shut down. Like the pandemic canceled them out basically. So it's nice to see that there are a lot of small businesses that were able to get through that and still be profitable as a small business and continue on. So it's good to see that that small business mindset still exists, even though the pandemic tried to crush a lot of that.
I think just like seeing how people are affected by everybody's art in the area, different booths, whether it's mine or someone else's, and how everyone comes together and supports each other is just really, it's a really cool thing to experience in Fargo, especially after pandemic.
In Fargo, Aaron Walling, Valley News Live.
Many of these vendors are now preparing for a summer full of markets and fairs held right here in the Midwest. Later on Valley News Live at 10, Americans are expected to spend more money on Dad this year for Father's Day. But up next, tomorrow might be a good day to hit the pool, but a cool down is in the forecast for the end of the week. Summer's up next.